The rain-soaked asphalt still lingers in my memory, its sharp scent clinging to my sneakers as I stood on the curb outside my childhood home. My duffel bag sagged against my leg, stuffed with clothes I'd barely had time to grab. The porch light flickered, casting a dim yellow glow across the wet lawn, and through the front door's glass pane, I could see their shadows. Mom, Dad, my older sister Lauren, arguing in the living room. They didn't glance out to see me standing there, soaked through, my breath clouding in the cold November air. That was when it hit me. I wasn't just leaving. I was gone. Let me rewind a bit. I'm Paul, 24 years old, and until that night 6 months ago, I'd been living in my parents' house in a quiet suburb outside Raleigh, North Carolina. It wasn't fancy. Think cul-de-sacs, matching brick houses, and neighbors who wave but don't really connect. I'd moved back after college, mostly because I couldn't afford rent on my own. At least, that's what my family believed. My family's always been tricky. Mum's a high school guidance counselor, all about life plans and stability. Dad runs a small hardware store, the kind that's been around forever, but barely turns a profit. Lauren's 28, married to a CPA named Greg, and they've got a toddler who's adorable, but shrieks like a fire alarm. Growing up, I was the odd one out, the kid who'd rather mess with computers than play sports or charm the neighbors. That made me the misfit. Mom would sigh and say, "Paul, when are you going to get it together?" Dad just grunted and handed me a broom to sweep the store. Lauren? She'd tease me non-stop, called me basement boy, because I spent so much time in my room coding. They had no idea what I was working on down there. Nobody did. It started in my sophomore year of college. I was tinkering on my laptop, trying to solve a problem for a group project. We needed a way to track inventory for a fake business, but every tool we found was either slow or crazy expensive. So I built my own. Nothing wild, just a simple interface to log stock, predict shortages, and spit out reports. My teammates loved it. Our professor gave us an A and said I should do something with it. I brushed it off. But that summer, I kept at it. By senior year, I'd turned it into a real platform. I called it StockStream. Dumb name, I know, but it stuck. It wasn't just for class anymore. I'd reached out to a few local businesses, offered it free to get feedback. A coffee shop downtown signed up, then a clothing store, then a landscaping crew. They loved how easy it was, how it saved them hours wrestling with spreadsheets. I started charging a subscription, $50 a month. Nothing huge. By graduation, I had 20 clients. By the time I moved back home, I had 200. Here's the kicker. I didn't tell a soul. Not my parents, not Lauren, not even my best friend Jake. Part of it was because I didn't think they'd understand. Software sounds like wizardry to Dad, and Mum would probably lecture me about benefits. But mostly, I was scared. What if it crashed and burned? What if I jinxed it by talking it up? So I kept it secret, working late nights in the basement, answering client emails, fixing bugs, adding features. During the day, I'd help at Dad's store or mow lawns to keep them off my back. To them, I was just Paul, the aimless kid who hadn't found his way. That's what sparked the blow-up. It was a Friday, and we were all at the dinner table. Me, Mom, Dad, Lauren, Greg, and their kid, who was smearing peas across the high chair. Mom had made meatloaf, the kind that's dry, but you eat it because it's home. The conversation started fine. Lauren was going on about their new house, how they were redoing the kitchen. Then Mom turned to me, fork in hand, and said, "Paul, have you thought about that bank teller job I mentioned?" I shrugged. Not really my thing. She let out that long, disappointed sigh I'd heard a million times. You can't just drift forever. You need a plan. I'm working on stuff, I said, pushing my meatloaf around. Dad snorted. What? Playing video games in the basement? Real impressive. That hurt, but I stayed quiet. Lauren, of course, couldn't resist. Come on, Paul. You're 24. Greg was already managing accounts at your age. You don't even pay rent here. I help out, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I work at the store. I fix things. Fix things? Mom said, raising an eyebrow. You broke the lawnmower last month. That was because it's ancient, I shot back. The table went silent. Even the toddler stopped banging her spoon. Dad leaned forward, his face flushed. Don't talk to your mother like that. You've been mooching for 2 years. You think you're above a real job? It's not about that, I said, my pulse racing. I'm building something. I just need time. Building what? Lauren laughed, but it wasn't friendly. A Roblox empire. I gripped my fists under the table. I could have spilled it right then. About StockStream, the clients, the money stacking up in my business account. But I didn't. Maybe I was too mad. Maybe I wanted to prove it to myself first. Enough, Dad said, slamming his hand on the table. I'm done. You've got 1 month to get a job or get out. Mom gasped. Tom, don't. No, Karen, he needs to hear it. We've coddled him long enough. I looked at them. Mom's anxious eyes, Dad's hard stare, Lauren's smug little grin. Something snapped. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor. Fine. I don't need a month. I'll be gone by morning. I stormed downstairs, grabbed my duffel, and started packing. Shirts, jeans, my laptop, a couple notebooks. I heard them arguing upstairs. Mom saying it was too harsh, Dad saying I needed a wake-up call, Lauren saying I'd be back in a week. I didn't care. I zipped the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked out into the rain. That's how I ended up on the curb, watching my family through the window, like I was already a stranger. I didn't have a plan. Not really. I had about $2,000 in my personal account. Cash from odd jobs, not the business. StockStream's account? That was a whole different beast. I'd been plowing most of the revenue back in, hiring a freelance coder to help with updates, covering server costs, running small ads to pull in more clients. But even after expenses, there was a lot left. Like a lot. I'd never touched it though. It didn't feel real. I walked to the gas station a mile away, my sneakers squelching with every step. The clerk didn't look up as I bought a coffee and sat in the corner scrolling my phone. I texted Jake, the only person I could think of who wouldn't pry too much. Hey, can I crash at your place for a bit? He texted back fast. Dude, yeah. What's going on? Long story? Be there in an hour. Jake lived in a rundown apartment downtown, the kind with chipped paint and a couch that smelled like stale pizza. He was a line cook, always broke but always easygoing. When I showed up, dripping wet, he just tossed me a towel and a beer. Parents? He asked, leaning against the counter. Yup. Figured. You good? I nodded, but I wasn't sure. We didn't talk much after that. I crashed on his couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of his fridge. My phone buzzed. Mom, texting me to come back, saying we could work it out. I didn't answer. The next morning, I opened my laptop and checked StockStream's dashboard. I'd picked up 3 new clients overnight, 2 cafes and a gym. That brought me to 312 total, each paying $50 to $200 a month depending on their plan. I did the math in my head. Even on the low end, I was clearing 6 figures a year after costs. Probably more. I'd never let myself dwell on it before. It was just numbers on a screen. But sitting there, with nowhere to go, it sank in. I wasn't just scraping by. I was thriving. I spent the next week at Jake's, plotting my next step. I didn't want to burn through my savings on rent, but I also didn't want to live on a couch forever. So I started hunting for a place. Not a palace, just something mine. I found a one-bedroom loft in a converted warehouse, all brick walls and huge windows. The rent was high, but I could handle it. I signed the lease 3 days later. Moving in felt unreal. I didn't have much, just my duffel, my laptop, and a cheap mattress I ordered online. But standing in that empty space, sunlight pouring through the glass, I felt something I hadn't in years. Pride, maybe, or freedom. I dove into StockStream. With no day job to fake, I had time to focus. I hired another coder, a marketing guy, even a customer support rep to handle emails. Clients kept coming, mostly word of mouth, but the ads helped too. By Christmas, I had 500 accounts. By February, I was nearing 800. Bigger companies started reaching out, ones with multiple locations, asking if I could tweak the software for them. I said yes, even when I wasn't sure I could pull it off. Fake it till you make it, right? Meanwhile, my family kept texting. Mum's messages were gentle, worried. "Paul, please call me. We didn't mean for this to happen." Dad's were blunt. "You proving your point yet? Come home." Lauren's were the worst. "Heard you moved out. Hope you're not in over your head." I ignored them all. Not just out of anger, though that was part of it. I was busy. And honestly, I didn't know what to say. How do you tell people who think you're a failure that you're secretly running $1 million business? Because yeah, it was worth millions. I didn't realize how much until March, when I got an email from a venture capital firm in San Francisco. They'd heard about StockStream through a client and wanted to talk. I thought it was a prank at first, but I set up a Zoom call anyway. The guy, Mark, mid-40s, polo shirt, way too excited, asked a ton of questions. How many users? What's the retention rate? Any competitors? I answered straight, half expecting him to laugh and hang up. Instead, he said, "Paul, we think you've got something huge. We'd like to offer $5 million for a 20% stake." I nearly spilled my coffee. $5 million. For a fifth of my company. That meant StockStream was worth $25 million on paper. I was 24, living in a loft with no furniture, and I'd built something worth more than my parents' house, their store, and Lauren's perfect life combined. I didn't take the deal. Not yet. I wanted to think it over. Maybe get a lawyer. But that call changed everything. It wasn't just a side project anymore. It was real. April came, and I got an invite to Lauren's birthday party. It was at their house, a big colonial with a pristine lawn and a mailbox that probably cost more than my car. I almost didn't go. But Mom called, her voice shaky, and said, "Please, Paul, we miss you." I gave in. I showed up in jeans and a hoodie, carrying a bottle of wine I'd grabbed last minute. The house smelled like candles and roasted chicken, and the dining room was packed. Family, friends, Greg's co-workers. Everyone was laughing, clinking glasses, passing plates. It felt like walking into someone else's world. Mom hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. "You look good," she said, her eyes scanning my face. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm fine." Dad clapped my shoulder, stiff but trying. "Good to see you, kid." Lauren was less warm. "Well, look who's alive," she said, smirking as she poured a drink. "What's the occasion? Run out of couch to crash on?" I let it slide, but it stung. We sat down to eat, 30 people around a long table, all talking over each other. I stayed quiet, mostly picking at my food. Then Greg, who'd had a few drinks, leaned over and said, "So, Paul, still figuring things out? Lauren says you're in some artist's loft now. Sounds quirky." The table hushed. I felt everyone's eyes on me. Mum looked nervous, like she thought I'd storm out. Dad just chewed his chicken, waiting. I could have dodged it, could have shrugged and moved on. But I was tired of hiding, tired of their pity. So I set down my fork and said, "Actually, I'm running a business, software. It's doing pretty well." Lauren snorted. "Software? What, like an app? Don't tell me you're one of those crypto guys." "No," I said, keeping my voice even. "It's called StockStream. Helps businesses manage inventory. I've got about 900 clients now. Just got an offer for $5 million last month." The room went dead silent. You could have heard a fork clatter. Mum's mouth dropped. Dad stopped chewing. Lauren's glass froze halfway to her lips. "$5 million?" Greg said, laughing like it was absurd. "For what?" "For 20% of the company," I said. "I didn't take it. I'm not ready to sell." Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Lauren said, "You're lying. No way." I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app for StockStream's account, and slid it across the table. The balance was right there, $1.2 million, and that was just the cash, not the valuation. Lauren stared at it, her face draining of color. Greg grabbed the phone, squinting like he couldn't trust his eyes. Mum started crying. "Is this real?" Dad asked, his voice rough. "Yeah," I said. "It's real." The rest of the night was a haze, people firing questions, half amazed, half doubtful. Lauren barely spoke after that, just sat there, looking like she'd been punched. Mom kept hugging me, saying she was proud but also sorry, over and over. Dad pulled me aside before I left and said, "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at him, at the creases in his face, the hardware store calluses on his hands. "I didn't think you'd believe me." He didn't say anything, just nodded. I drove home that night feeling lighter, but also empty. I'd proved them wrong, I guess, but it didn't fix what was broken. It's been a few weeks since the party. Mum calls every day now, trying to bridge the gap. Dad's offered to help with the business, though I'm not sure he knows what that means. Lauren texted me once, a half-hearted, "Congrats, I guess." I haven't responded. StockStream's still growing. I hired a CFO last week, someone who actually knows how to handle numbers that big. We're closing in on 1,000 clients, and I'm thinking about that VC deal again. Not for the money, I don't need it, but maybe to push things further. I walk around my loft sometimes, still mostly bare, except for a couch and a TV I rarely turn on. The windows catch the sunset just right, painting the brick walls gold. I think about that night in the rain, standing on the curb, feeling like I'd lost it all. I didn't know then what I could do. Maybe I still don't.